Brother Titchen and my great-grandfather Freehoff Nielson were sent by the church to the town of Rama. That's just over the Continental Divide to the west. And they were both polygamists. They both had multiple wives. Well, my grandpa, he only had two. Brother Titchen had three. But they were the settlers of Bluewater. Rama was settled first, and Rama was considered more of a busy place, or a place of where you can go and come and stuff, than Bluewater was. There was not really anything there at Bluewater, but they were building the railroad across the country, all the way from Chicago to Los Angeles, and it comes right through there. And they got jobs working on the railroad, and that's when Bluewater got started. And then they homesteaded there, and my grandfather, because of that, he spent his whole life in Bluewater. We have Bluewater Lake. It was a dirt dam at first, but it washed out 3 times and flooded the valley. So then they got some help from experts and built a 90-high concrete dam. And that's what Brother Titchen and Grandpa Nielson did. Got that dam built. We had good water. There was a lot of water. It filled up so high that the water has run over the top of the dam 3 times. And that was when I was a little kid that happened. My grandpa had a ranch. He had 8 sections, and then 1 leased section from the Bureau of Land Management. And it's better than owning it, because you just have to pay a little bit of rent each year. And you pay taxes on all the other land. You don't have to pay any taxes on that one. And I think that my dad's brother, Uncle Alan, he got the ranch when I was about the time I went to BYU, I guess. And his family has it still. And they've bought other sections, so there's more than 9 sections. There's probably 20 sections of ranch there that they have. His parents moved out of their home and let them have that home. And they moved to their home that my brother John has there. They call it the library. It was first built on the ranch, and then they moved it down to town, and it's right on the corner. And it was when I was a teenager that we moved that house from the corner around in back of the house that my brother John has. And they decided to call it the library because when my grandparents died, they were divvying out the books and stuff, and the requirement was it had to go to a library. So they named the homestead the library, and it's still there. And that's the house that my dad was born in. And I guess maybe I was too. I started milking cows when I was 3, and we had 2 cows, Token and Nancy. Token had tits that were about like my fingers. And you know, being 3 years old, that was just about really good for me to learn to milk with little hands. My hands were way little then, you know. But Nancy's were this big around. Hated to try to milk her. I wasn't very good at it. Just couldn't get my hands around those great big tits. But I grew. I was growing all the time, and it got easier as I grew. And I milked those cows until I came to BYU. And then I had 2 younger brothers that had to start doing it. And you know, I was 17 when I came to BYU, and I was 3 when I started, so that's 14 years of milking. I fell in the irrigation ditch when I was 4.
Fell in?
Yeah, I went out in the field to get the cows in, and one of them jumped in the ditch, and I had to get her out. And, my dad would be really mad at me if I didn't bring all the cows in. And I slipped on the side of the ditch. It was kind of a deep ditch, but my feet came up off the ground, and I was starting to float down the ditch, but my nose was still out. I was little enough, I didn't weigh very much, you know, at that age. And so my head didn't go under the water, and I finally grabbed a weed and pulled myself to the bank and crawled up, got all muddy and sticky, and drove the cows in to milk. I really enjoyed school because my grandmother was my teacher for the first 3 grades. As a matter of fact, they started me in kindergarten in April before I turned 5. And, you know, just April and May was all the schooling I got that year. But in May is when my birthday is. And then I was 5, and I started in the 1st grade in September. And I was finished with the grade school 8 years later. And went to high school in Grants. Did all 4 years of high school there. Rode the bus most of the time to high school.
Your elementary school was in Bluewater?
Uh-huh. Yeah, and that building's been knocked down too. It was used for a community center for a while, and I guess it got in such bad shape nobody took care of it, you know, and so they just knocked it down. No, it's a nothing place. It's like a huge trailer park.
Oh.
There's not much to it, and very few members of the church there. And they built a chapel there, and then they added on to it over the years, and I helped with one of the last additions that they built on it. I was a deacon, and they assessed me $100. So I worked $100 worth of work on the chapel in Bluewater, and I think my brother was probably the last bishop that they had in Bluewater. They now have to drive to Thoreau because there's just not very many people there.
When did you learn to drive?
When I was 4. Started driving tractors when I was 4. And I think by the time I was 12, they let me drive. Well, I know that I wasn't 12. I was probably 10, maybe even 8 when I started driving tractors. And I think the first time I drove a truck was it was just in the field, you know. They were loading hay on, and they just put it in low gear and pull the throttle out a little bit and let the clutch out, and I just steer it, you know. It's like steering a tractor. I drove lots while I was growing up, in the field mostly. Once in a while, I'd drive on a public street. We didn't have police around anyway.
Yeah.
Yeah, but after I had a driving license, I could go, you know, they'd send me on long errands then. all the way to Grants and back, and even farther than that. And then there was movies in Grants, and that was a 12-mile drive to go to movies. And when I was little, see, my grandfather was blind, so a movie wasn't any good for him. He'd only get the sound, and then you'd have to sit and tell him what was going on. So he didn't really go to the movie, hardly ever. I don't think he ever went to a movie in my lifetime. But my grandmother, she liked to go to movies, so the grandfather would babysit me and Ruth and Lois. And so my mom and dad and grandmother, they'd drive to the show house in Grants. And they did that quite a bit. That was something they enjoyed. And when I got older, I liked going to the movies in Grants too. I mean, it looks like a big place because of all the trailers, but there's just trailers everywhere up through there. And they've added some new streets and have trailers on those. So it's gone. I mean, it saddens to me that so much of the old stuff is gone. But anyway, you keep on coming out this road here to the cemetery. And my dead siblings and parents are buried out here in the Bluewater Cemetery. That's all sure a long time ago.